All right, guys, welcome back. Today I'm going to be talking about mushrooms and more specifically psilocybin golden teacher mushrooms. So, about a week and a half ago, I tried mushrooms for the third time, but for context, the first two times that I tried mushrooms was recreational. There's generally two umbrellas that mushroom or psychedelic use falls into, and that's recreational and then therapeutic. Therapeutic can be for mind expansion or for trauma healing. Recreational could be pretty much anything that isn't the other two, and that's not to say that recreational can't also be the other two, but I just want to differentiate between purposefully and like having the intention of I'm going to heal or I'm going to expand my mind and my consciousness, and the intention of I'm just going to do this for fun, right? A week and a half ago, I did 6 grams of mushrooms, and my intention was for trauma healing, not really mind expansion. There's a lot of research on, that I've done where it says you should heal before you try to expand your mind. And I'm not really going to get into that, but it's just a caveat, right? If you want to expand your mind, you probably want to do that after you've sort of neutralized your mind, because a lot of times mind expansion can result in more trauma if you're not ready or healed from past trauma. And so just getting that out of the way, I did 6 grams of Golden Teacher, and basically what I found is that it's more a milder version of psilocybin. So hence why I did 6 grams, right? 5 grams is your average hero's dose, and that's where a lot of the work gets done, where a lot of your ego goes away and you're finally able to bring stuff up that you're not able to in your normal life. So I had the option, I'm going to do 5. I was considering 5, and then I decided, all right, but I've had other psychedelic experiences, and it's a milder mushroom, so I'm going to do 6. I know some people that have done 8 or 9, and that's their hero's dose. I don't want to do too much, but I also don't want to do just 5. So I did 6. So there's a lot of caveats to doing these things, so don't listen to what I say and then just go get mushrooms illegally somewhere and decide to do it by yourself, I had one of my best friends come and stay with me where I was at just for the day, and she's got a lot of experience with psychedelics. She's also got a lot of experience with trauma, and like when you do any of these experiences, what I've found is that you want to have somebody that you trust, that knows what you're doing, that understands what you're doing, I started around 2 p.m. I started to eat the mushrooms. 6 grams is a lot. I went pretty fast, so I was done by like 2:15 eating them. And at that point, I just put on a face mask, headphones, and I listened to classical music for an hour and a half, maybe an hour and a half to 2 hours. It started to go into, sort of like Native American music with a lot of flute. It got to a point where all I was experiencing was a lot of visuals, and the music was guiding it very heavily. And I said, okay, this is great, right? This is neat. This is fun. I'm not doing this for recreational purposes. And so I stopped. I took the mask off. I took the headphones off and just decided to walk around the apartment for a little bit, sort of check in with Megan. And we talked for half an hour. I told her a dream that I'd had prior to this experience, about a phone call with a family member, and nice little chit chat. And then it sort of wore me out, right? Like having a conversation, engaging with another human being was a little bit exhausting. So I decided, all right, I'm going to go lie back down. I put the music back in, face mask on, but right away it was like, this isn't right. I need to just be with myself. I can't. Music influences your emotions and your thoughts way too much, and the face mask makes it so that everything's dark. So I'm seeing like being influenced a lot more than I want to be. So I took the face mask off, took the music off, and I just laid in my bed for 2.5 to 3 hours, I would say, and just let whatever was going to come, which is that's what the therapeutic and mind expanding uses look like. It's just you sitting or lying down like I am right now, obviously not talking to a camera, and you're just experiencing the world with no interruptions, and you're not doing anything. You don't need to be anywhere else. Once I finally was able to get comfortable being in that space of I don't have to do anything, she's fine, she's eating food out there, she's got stuff to do, I don't need to worry about her, right? Because I've got a lot of codependency issues. She's taken care of. This is about me. Let's take care of me. The first thought that I had, what really kicked off what I would call the healing portion of the session, was thoughts about my dad. He lives in Mexico right now. That's where I grew up. And he is in his mid to late 60s. He's got diabetes, and he's the kind of guy that's like, I'm not going to go to the hospital, right? Like, I'm just going to drop dead one day. I don't want to know if I'm going to drop dead. And then I started to think about our relationship, and, I haven't seen him in over 2 years now. And I just started to have a lot of emotions about my dad in present day, but then also I started to have a lot of emotions of my dad in like my childhood. And just it was like a shift in perspective. I started to feel sadness for the distance that existed between us when I was a kid, without putting blame on him or on me. Just objectively, there was an emotional distance between us. Even though we were very close, I started to feel that distance come up, and that sadness around that distance, and sort of a longing for not having had that distance. And obviously I started, well, my dad's old, he's getting to that age, there is this whole virus thing happening, he's more vulnerable, he's not great at taking care of himself. I basically just started to think about mortality and how real it is, how quickly I am approaching that phase in my life. And that sort of unlocked Pandora's box for me. For whatever reason, I was prepared for it in that moment. And as soon as I started thinking about my dad and all the things I just mentioned, I started to weep. I just started to weep and weep, but like different than I normally would in my life. Because when I cry, my throat hurts a little bit. And it always feels like I'm not really allowing myself the full experience of crying, right? Whether that's, I don't want my neighbors to hear me, I don't want my brother to hear me, I don't want my friends to hear me, I don't want people to see me, right? If I'm driving, like, there's always a reason why I have to sort of suppress my cry to just enough where I can still cry, but like people aren't going to see me, right? There's this fear of being caught feeling. And what the mushrooms do, or what the mushrooms did for me, was remove that fear. So it's like, it unlocked that I have to cry, and it gave me the tools to cry fully. So I started to cry, I started to think about other family members, and then this is where maybe if I had kept the face mask on, I would have hallucinated, but because I didn't, I wasn't really, I was very aware of where I was. I was lying in my bed in the fetal position, just like holding myself, holding a rag that I was crying into. But I had the awareness, this is where it's going to get a little bit like, the fuck are you talking about, dude? I had two different awarenesses. I know I just did 4. I had 2 different awarenesses. One was me right now at 24, and then the other one, the one that was feeling a lot of it, was me when I was a kid. And there's not really a specific age that I could like hone in on, but it was, from 5 to 11 years old. And so all of this awareness of when I was 11 or 5 to 11, and I lived at my childhood home, the only home or one of the only homes where me and my close family all lived together in this big house, this big fancy house where we had everything we needed, but we were all separated. I had my own room, my brother had his own room, my sister had her own room, my mom had her own room, my dad was never around, the maid had her own room, the dogs were outside, nobody cared about the dogs. And so we had a lot of this beauty surrounding us, but yet there was a lot that we weren't allowing ourselves to feel. And it just fucking hit me, man. Like, I wept for like 2 hours, and I thought about, when I say thought, what I really mean is feel. I say thought right now because that's what I've been conditioned to, you know? But in that experience, it's really a feeling that you have. And so I felt very connected to my sister, who I haven't spoken to in almost a year, in like the present day. I felt very connected to her as children. And I felt very connected to my brother as children. I felt very connected to my mother and my father as the versions of them that I saw when I was a child. Because that's when all of our collective trauma was formed. And it was, I was weeping, and I was, this awareness of mine, this 5 to 11-year-old was afraid, and he was sad, and he was alone, and he just wanted to be told that everything was going to be okay. And then this part of me, this 24-year-old part of me, was aware, I've done a lot of research of what mushrooms, what psychedelics can bring up. And so I was very aware that this is what was happening, and that it wasn't that I was living this again. It was just, I'm bringing this back up, but with the awareness that it is in the past and I can handle it now. There is like, it's almost like I don't even know if this is a metaphor, but it's like a little tank that you've got, right? We've all got a little tank that's, this big. We've all got it. We're carrying it around inside of us. And what that tank is holding is all of your suppressed emotions. Think of it as like a scuba tank. There's a little valve, and if you do this, like it starts to let out air, right? Think of your tank, it starts to let out emotions. Anytime you turn it, it starts to let out emotions. But also, anytime you turn it, it's a disturbance to people around you. And so you want to like quickly put it back so that it doesn't let out too much. If you feed your fucking tank mushrooms, it's like you just open it, and just, that's what's happening for as long as you allow it to. I think genuinely I could have probably cried for at least twice as long as I did, but my defenses came up at the 2-hour mark, and I said, I've got to walk the dog, or it's getting late. I just started to make up reasons for why, like, it's time that I stop feeling, right? But I had this awareness, right? Like, this is what I need to do, is to just exist and to just feel what is coming up for me. Because all of my life I've been filling this tank with emotions that I'm too afraid to feel, or that I was never taught how to feel. And so my tank is like, it's good for like a while, you know what I mean? Like if you open it all the way, it'll go for a while. But this is why psychedelics are growing in awareness and being used to treat these kinds of things, is because they allow you to turn the knob and to release everything that you haven't released for 5, 6, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 years. However long you've been holding on to these things, you might not even be aware that you're holding on to these things. once you see that there is data and evidence and research, and oh, this is a real thing, this isn't just people talking about their experiences kind of like I am right now, you realize, okay, I've got this tank in me and it's weighing me down. I have two choices that I can make. I can pretend that that's not really there and see where that leads me. You see it in people that work in an office, but they hate their job, but they're never going to do anything about it. Why is that? That's because they're afraid to feel the rejection, the abandonment of other people's expectations, and here's what I actually want to do with my life. You know, if I go here, people might not gravitate toward me. And because that was my experience as a child, I don't want to relive that, right? And it's like, that's all just your tank saying, hey, you haven't let me out yet. Because you're not going to relive it. You're an adult. You're going to make new decisions and your life is going to go on, and it's not going to be the same thing that it was when you were a kid, but it's going to feel that way until you allow yourself to let those things come up that happened when you were a kid and then release them. You know, for me, a lot of what came up was my relationships to my family, what my trauma actually felt like, you know, because I have a great understanding of trauma as far as like, you know, I experienced a lot of neglect and I didn't experience very much emotional support. So I was kind of my own parent at a certain age where you're still very much in need of a parent. And so I had this understanding, but I hadn't really felt that. And what this did was that I was bawling in the fetal position, bawling my eyes out. And I just felt like I was alone and nobody was going to come and get me. Nobody was going to help me. I felt like the world was ending. You know, one of my awarenesses felt like the world is ending. This is so painful. I can't believe it. And then there was also me in present day able to say, wow, that's a lot. That's a lot, kiddo. That's a lot. But look at where we are right now. That's all behind us. That's all behind us. Just let it come up, let it come up, let it go. That's not where you are anymore. So you can feel safe, you know? And so, yeah, after that crying session, we went for a walk, and, you know, then what it becomes is you have this awareness that you've got this tank, and whenever an emotion comes up, a lot of the times we don't even make the decision. The decision is made for us to suppress that emotion, you know? And a lot of times we don't have the choice, right? A lot of times I've been at work after a breakup and I'm not over it yet, and I want to cry as I'm taking somebody's order, but I can't. And so once you have these experiences, it really connects you to your roots and the pure being that you were when you were born, when you were a little kid, that people held up and they were like, oh, he's so beautiful, he's so cute, and they hug you and they kiss you and they love you. That's what we all are, but we just are conditioned every day to believe that it's not okay to be that. It's not okay to be lovable. It's not okay to start wailing like a baby and crying. It's not okay to feel and to wear our emotions on our face. And I didn't know that psychedelics could bring that back up for me, and that they could, you know, it's so bizarre. Oh, I'm gonna eat this plant that grew out of the earth and it's gonna tell me things about my childhood. You know, it sounds like I sound like a fucking crazy person right now. And anybody listening who hasn't had psychedelic experiences, you know, 100%. I understand where you're at, and that just means you're not ready to to dive into this world, and that's totally fine. You know, a couple of years ago, I wasn't either. I thought, you know, that psychedelics, that means you're fucking ruining your life. You're throwing away your life. You're just wasting it. You're just tossing away the gift that you've been given, right? That's one option, right? Recreational can turn into tossing your life away and just doing it every day because you're addicted to this state where you feel. It's hard to go back to recreational once you see what these things were really made for. And it's also hard to ignore the fact that if this can happen, then there's a lot more to life that we don't have a solid understanding of. Let's release the ego and just do our job as human beings, which is to, you know, feel whatever we need to feel and to help people and to do the best that we can. My point in sharing this is that a lot of men especially don't have the tools, the resources, the comfort level to even talk about emotions. You know, I'm at a point where I've come to realize that talking about emotions isn't even what's gonna get me to where I need to get, right? As far as being emotionally connected to myself, that's just like one step. And most people can't even take that one step of talking about their emotions because it's negative thing. You're weak if you talk about these things. But with the right people, under the right circumstances, and once you are ready to experience these things and you have the willingness and the want to really try to understand all of these things and to feel, more than to understand is to feel. Psychedelics are, there's yoga, you know, there's a lot of other things. It's not just psychedelics. This isn't me saying do psychedelics. There's a lot of other things. Exercise, I mean, meditation, everybody gets there some other way. But for most people, those other ways don't work. I've been doing meditation for 6 years now, and it's done this, whereas one psychedelic experience done this. You know, you can't even see where my hand ends. That's how much of an impact they can have. And so really this video is just about like lowering the stigma that exists, which is already being lowered, but I just wanted to add to that and to also to share my experience with psychedelics, because it's not a scary experience. It's just a painful experience most of the times that you've already lived and you just didn't allow yourself to witness. So thank you for listening, and if you like what you heard, you can subscribe. I have a podcast too, but really I just wanted to share this video with you. So